let's get into the Jags. And just honestly, this was a game that they had to have. There is no mistaking what needed to go down yesterday. Houston had the win here, embarrassed Jacksonville a little bit with the 4 backup offensive linemen. C.J. Stroud basically introducing himself to the NFL world that day and has had a sensational season since then. Well, Jacksonville goes in there and needs it in the worst way. Leon, I'm telling you what, I knew it was going to be a slugfest. It was not going to be easy. Plenty of points, and they came out on top.
Yeah, listen, it was a title fight. And to be quite honest with you, this team over the last couple of weeks in big games, they came up short. They came up short against Niners, came up short against Kansas City. Maybe you give them the Bills in London. Maybe that was a big game. The Bills were a hot team, and they came away and they won that game. But this was essentially for the AFC South. And this team, man, they doing something that listen, in my 11 years of playing NFL football, you just don't do in the NFL. You don't go 6-0 on the road. I mean, even Coach Campo was talking about this last year. He was talking about this yesterday on the 5th quarter. When you look at a season, you say, listen, you got to go undefeated at home, and then you split the away games. And then that's how you get in the playoffs. This team is in reverse. They're winning all their games. They're winning the games on the road, and they're 500 at home. I mean, but they're almost 500 at home. So this is what this team is doing. It's a hell of an accomplishment. Right now, they're 7-1 out of 8 games. They're the hot team, and the only reason why we're not getting all the attention, which is good and fine, I'm happy with it, is because of that Jaguar something. If we were any other team in the NFL, we'd be getting all kind of love. Hot. But this team don't know how to handle love, so don't give it to them. They play better when their back's up against the wall. So I like that about them. Yeah, this was a good game. It was a big game. It was in a hostile environment. This team answered the bell. I mean, Trevor played phenomenally. Calvin Ridley played them, and Josh Allen. You can hear the cash register. It's
gosh, yes.
He got after it, and he was our closer. Listen, if he doesn't get that sack towards the end,
you could easily make the argument he was as much of the reason they won the game.
Exactly. If he doesn't get that sack towards the end, pushing those yards back, I mean that field goal goes in. I mean you don't hear the boink in the game. So yeah, it was a good game. It was a complete game, I think. And it's good for Jacksonville to answer a big game, answer the bell.
When you think about them in that environment, and you were there, Mia, so we'll get some sound from the locker room, but the energy, they get fired up. And I think even Frank said to us last week before we ended the week was that Mark Vandermeer, play-by-play for the Houston Texans, talking about this being one of the biggest games in franchise history. I'm like, what? Well, they have had their way with Jacksonville. If you just look at the series history. But this was a game that this football team was going to make sure they got.
Yeah. I refrained. Some other media members did. But now that the Houston fan base and media are trashing the Jags name, I don't feel bad in saying this. Biggest game in franchise history, or at least in the past 5 years, and I counted about 40% of the seats empty at kickoff. And getting into NRG Stadium yesterday, no issues whatsoever. Barely saw a tailgate. I know that I get there 2.5 hours early. Little disappointing, though, because it was built up all week as the media darling, the Houston Texans, the AFC South de facto showdown. And certainly by the third quarter, a lot of those seats had filled in. But I'm not going to lie, boys, I was a little disappointed. I do think the effect of having a roof, which obviously the hope is that Everbank Stadium one day will at least have some sort of retractable cover roof. I think that really amplified the noise. But thankfully, this team has already played in a couple of harsh environments, most notably the Superdome in New Orleans. And so they were prepared for that reverberating noise that in the first half, I didn't really feel it. In the second half, you definitely felt it, especially those refs you suck chants from the Texans fans.
They got the benefit of some unbelievably good calls going the Jaguars' way. There is no question about that. And you saw fans, at least the television coverage, they're just like, what the H is going on? And there were a couple of makeup calls, and then there were a couple of calls on top of that. The one PI call that was not flagged against the Houston's defense on Evan Ingram, they made up for it like 2 or 3 times after that. It was crazy. And I get it. If you're feeling like the refs are on one side versus the other, but it just could be just a bad officiating crew. They're everywhere, by the way.
Well, this notion that the refs were trying to help us win games, when did that ever happen?
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
They don't do that for Duval.
Yeah. No.
And that other time it goes against us.
Stop it. You're starting to sound like Hacker.
Yeah.
Stop it.
That's fine. I'm a homer.
Yeah.
I'm a converted homer.
I mean, he's not a homer. He's a cheerleader. So, you're starting to
I'm not
really sound like him right now.
Well.
Right? That's all I'm saying.
No, I just say you couldn't help but if you were the Houston side of this, you were looking at it like, what the H? I mean, it did not look like the officials were on your side at all.
It was bad calls on both sides of the ball. Absolutely. The refs had a bad day.
When you look at the sum total of this, though, and Mike Caldwell, let's give him some credit. This defense, while they had trouble GPSing C.J. Stroud for a while. They had him corralled. You've heard of geofencing? They had that. They just could not get to him, and he just kept improvising. And I think people's opinions of C.J. Stroud have changed dramatically over the last 4 or 5 weeks. But still, they have liabilities along that offensive line. There's no question. And when it needed to happen most, Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker got to C.J. Stroud yesterday.
He's also a dude, man. C.J.
there's
Stroud,
no
my
question.
God.
Yeah.
He's the real deal. This game for the next 5, 6, 7 years is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal every time they play. So that's what I took away from that. I mean, it was a great game, and I thought Josh Allen might have had his best game, probably did have his best game since the Bills game when they won, what was that, like 9-6 or 6-3, whatever that was. I think he had his best game since then. He was not only impactful with the sacks, but he was affecting the quarterback consistently throughout the game. And that, I think, is what helped him. Because if you got a guy like C.J. Stroud back there, and you got a guy like Black on the outside, or Tank on the outside, excuse me. I was thinking of Tank Black, the former agent. You got him on the outside who can beat anybody. They're going to score a lot of points, man. A lot of points.
Yeah.
And if you can match him up against a second-year guy who kind of struggles at corner, you're gonna have success. They needed that pass rush, is my point.
Yeah.
And they got it. And I think it was not only Josh Allen, Roy Robinson-Harris had a great game. Great game. He continues to play at a high level. I think Trayvon played well. They played well, and I think the idea of what they were playing defensively, keep everything in front of you, also very smart.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, that kid's not going anywhere. Jacksonville, you may as well get used to it. But next decade, there's going to be battles between him and
they're
Trevor. They're going to get after it pretty good. So this notion that the AFC South is ours to run away with, no. Not as long as this kid is at quarterback. This kid is phenomenal. He had a phenomenal game. Only thing that frustrated me about the Jaguars is that when you put pressure on they didn't stay in their rush lanes. That was the most frustrating thing. When we brought the blitz, so we had the 4-man, and we're getting the pressure on or whatever. This kid, he's constantly looking downfield. While he's moving and maneuvering out of the pocket, he's looking downfield to make plays. And most of his plays he made was outside the pocket, the throws that he was making. That's just not us not being disciplined in our rush lanes, because a lot of times we should have kept them in the pocket and we didn't, because we're coming inside and all that other kind of stuff. And I understand it. You get pushed inside or whatever, but that guy's got to be the looper outside, because this kid, when he gets outside, he's even more dangerous when
he's
he
also
gets
pretty
inside.
good, too.
Oh, he's outstanding.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Remind me in that Georgia game when he played against Georgia, he cut up Georgia.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Same thing.
Even the fake at the goal line where he ran it in.
Play.
Yeah. He absolutely froze the defense and the cameras. And he's
going to be a problem for everybody in the
That's
NFL,
like something a veteran,
division.
Rodgers does in his 10th year in the league.
And all it is a nanosecond, but it's everything in a play like that, because he got everybody to bite and then just coasted right into the end zone.